Says we're off. All right.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the second edition of Draft Thoughts from Football Savages. I'm Ben Natan, and this is my co-host, Charles McDonald. Charles.
Hi.
And today we are doing a mock draft edition, which, as it turns out, is not spelled with an A. And I'm sure that most people are sick and tired of mock drafts, either on ESPN or on Twitter and stuff like that. We're going to do a different kind of spin. We don't really. This isn't about what we think is going to happen, because honestly, predicting the draft is a little bit of a useless endeavor from trying to make anything final with predictions. This is about what we would do, and then taking a look at what people are talking about and evaluating possible things happening and how stupid they likely are, because NFL teams are stupid. So let's just get right into this. I'll be going first with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and I'm going to take Marcus Mariota, the quarterback from Oregon. If you haven't heard of them, I think a lot of people expect Jameis Winston to go here, and I think both quarterbacks are going to be very good players. I'm pretty confident in that. On the field, they're going to be very good quarterbacks, and it just comes down to a matter of what you want from your quarterback. I think that Mariota is going to give you a more efficient type of passer who isn't going to turn the ball over, and who's going to be able to move the chains on a consistent basis, but who probably isn't going to consistently be that big play type through the air down the field. He can make those type of plays, but there's going to be a little bit more of a learning curve for him in that department. I think Winston is going to be that more dynamic playmaking type of quarterback, but then at the same time, you're getting a lot more variance with him, a lot more turnovers. So I like what Mariota brings to the table from a physical aspect, from a mental aspect, and just his playing style. I think that there's the issues that he has with the game is stuff that can be taught, and he has a lot of things both above the shoulders and below the shoulders that really can't be taught. So I'm gonna go with Marcus Mariota. Tampa needs a quarterback. They have two talented wide receivers in Mike Evans and Vincent Jackson, and I think that finally giving them a real quarterback is going to really help this offense and this team take off. Now, well, what are your thoughts on that, Charles?
I like it. They have to take one of the two quarterbacks. So it's really just your preference at number one, either Winston or Mariota. Mariota, he's great. He was definitely a more efficient passer in college, especially his last year. He's a little bit more of a projection to me than Winston is, just because of the style of offense they played in. But I think people saying that Mariota is a project, I think that's wrong, because I think he's ready to play from day one. It might just take him a little bit more time to get acclimated to the NFL game than Winston. But if you're picking number one, you got to go with the quarterback. And there's really only two that make sense in number one this year. So it's just your preference. Mariota, that's a fine pick.
Yeah, and I don't really think there's a lot of questions about where they're going to go from a position standpoint, and I think there's a lot out there that says they're going to be going with Jameis Winston instead, which I totally understand. But I don't really see a situation where they're trading out of this pick, and some stuff has been kind of a buzz the last couple of days about potentially trading out of it, and it doesn't really make sense. I don't think any kind of compensation matches the potential that a franchise quarterback will give to your team. So I think all of the stuff about trading out of number one is bullshit.
Yeah.
Just my opinion. So moving on, Charles, you have the Tennessee Titans.
All right. With the second pick, the Titans are going to pick Leonard Williams out of USC, big defensive tackle. I think they already signed Arakpo this offseason. They re-signed Derek Morgan. They claimed Jonathan Massaquoi off of waivers from the Atlanta Falcons. They've already got a stud in Jarrell Casey on the defensive line. So if you add Leonard Williams to the mix, you've already got one of the best front sevens in the league, probably right there. And if you're going to win the AFC South, you got to beat Andrew Luck. To beat Andrew Luck, you got to put pressure on the quarterback. And with the addition of Leonard Williams, they can not only stop the run, but they can get pressure on the quarterback too. So if the Titans can get that big defensive upgrade, roll the dice with Mettenberger for one more season, maybe they can get something going. But I don't have the biggest faith in Ken Wisdom to begin with to develop a quarterback. So why give him one now? Just give him the steady, elite defensive tackle. And just keep building that defense. What do you think?
I really like this pick. I think that for one, I think Mettenberger is getting underrated. He didn't have a great rookie season, but I think he was a much better rookie quarterback than people were giving him credit for. And there's a translatable skill set that you can really that can really project into the future as a quarterback. So it doesn't really make sense to roll the dice on a quarterback at this point, especially when you have an elite player like Leonard Williams on the board. And like you said, if you can't, one of the most important things in football is rushing the quarterback, and getting a Leonard Williams to pair him with Jarrell Casey and Derek Morgan and Brian Arakpo, that's a very, very dangerous, disruptive front seven. And at the very least, with Dick LeBeau now in Tennessee, you're going to be able to get a lot of pressure on the quarterback next year. So I like that pick. I think that's a good pick. So I have the Jacksonville Jaguars now, and I'm going to go with Vic Beasley, the edge rusher out of Clemson. Now, looking at the Jacksonville Jaguars scheme and looking at Vic Beasley as a player, it's a match made in heaven, because you have this Leo position where you have this edge defender playing in space, basically using their get off, their explosion to create disruption off the edge. And no player is better at maximizing themselves in space than Vic Beasley, who has this incredible explosive ability, is a very, very polished pass rusher. And he's really tailor-made for this scheme. He's tailor-made for this position. I really couldn't see them go elsewhere with this pick, at least logically. But of course,
Jacksonville.
Yeah, the last 2 years that everyone kind of projected one player to them, and this player is going to be the best fit in Jacksonville, and whether it was a quarterback or a receiver or an edge rusher, and they always went in some direction that really nobody was expecting them to go. So we could see that again this year. They could get a Dante Fowler, or they could even get an Amari Cooper, which would be weird because they took 2 receivers in the second round last year, and receiver is the one position on their team that really doesn't need immediate help. But they really do not have a dynamic edge presence on their team right now. They have some good interior guys. Senderick Marks got hurt last year, but he was a very good player. They signed Jared Odrick in free agency, so they have good interior players. It's about adding that a guy who can make a difference at that Leo position. I think really no one else besides Vic Beasley can do that. What do you think?
Yeah, he's the best player in this draft to me, but we all know Jacksonville's going to fuck it up somehow and take somebody else that it's just not as good.
It's amazing because, credit where credit's due, Jacksonville has consistently done well outside of the first round in David Caldwell's last 2 drafts. They've gotten guys like Linder and Allen Robinson and Bowanko and Gratz and McCray. They're getting guys who are talented, and they're adding impact players in the later round. Oh, Telvin Smith too. They're adding impact players in the later rounds, and with the Luke Jokel and the Blake Bortles pick, both look really bad at this point. So they could just. They could get Dante Fowler, and Dante. We're probably going to hit on this later. Dante Fowler is a good player, and a player I like a lot, but he's not like the perfect fit for that defense or that scheme. But who knows? Who knows? Hopefully they get Vic Beasley, because it would be fun to see Vic Beasley in a defense that's so
just perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So moving on to the Oakland Raiders.
All right. With the 4th pick, the Raiders are going to take Alvin Dupree from Kentucky. Dupree.
All right.
I'm not crazy about what Dupree is right now as an edge rusher or just a complete football player in general, but when you have somebody that athletic, it's really, really hard for me to understand how he could fail at the next level, especially because they're getting a pretty good defensive mind in Ken Norton coming over. They got solid acquisitions in Dan Williams on defense. They already have Khalil Mack, who's an absolute stud as a rookie. So that's going to be some pressure taken off of him. So if you can get him into a situation where the onus isn't on him to be like the number one pass rusher right from the get-go, I think you could see him see him be pretty productive his rookie season. He's the perfect fit for that Leo position if they're bringing over the Seattle defense. Put Mack at strong side linebacker, Dupree at Leo, and just have him wreak havoc on the quarterback. I mean, he's got a little ways to go with his technical game and understanding what offensive lines and offenses are trying to do to him. But he's so good, he's such a good athlete. It's really hard for me to see him fail in the long run. What do you think?
Well, Dupree's kind of he's difficult for me because I really like him, and I think what you said. I mean, he is such a good athlete. And really the way he tested and how he was able to run and jump at the weight that, I mean, he is a ridiculous athlete. My worry is that he's a little bit linear. And I don't think he's I don't like calling a guy dumb. He's not, he's very unpolished. He's very raw mentally in terms of both technique and awareness. But he has these flashes where this ridiculous amount of athleticism just kind of shows up and shows how disruptive it can be. And that is so enticing. And if you can get him with a smart, defensive staff, when you have Ken Norton, you have Jack Del Rio, you're hoping that they can use him in such a way that maximizes that linear explosiveness. Obviously, I think there is a big risk with taking him. I think he's one of the bigger risks in this class, but the reward that he can get, that you can get from him, is substantial. And I think that I would probably go in a separate direction with this pick. But I would go in a direction to upgrade the trenches, and I think that's what's important. I think that's what Oakland's going to want to do. They're going to want to upgrade the trenches, or maybe even move out of this pick. But I that's a good pick. So next, pick number 5, we have the Washington football team. Now they're a mess of a franchise, and they're probably going to pick the wrong player too. And it won't change the fact that they ruined RG3. But because I like RG3, I'm going to take La'el Collins, the offensive tackle out of LSU, hoping that pairing him with Trent Williams is going to give Washington a very powerful duo of tackles, and give whoever's playing quarterback good protection, because the offensive line play, while it hasn't been awful, hasn't been very good. So just adding an impact player like Collins to that team, and he is going to be a very, very good offensive tackle.
Yeah.
It's going to upgrade the offense, and that's all you can ask at this point for this team. I think a lot of people have them going with an edge player here, and that also makes a lot of sense with Arakpo leaving, and really you only have Ryan Kerrigan and Trent Murphy, who are both good players, but you probably want a real stud in there. You don't want Trent Murphy being a starting outside linebacker, at least in my opinion.
Yeah.
Picking a receiver here would probably be really dumb, although I've seen that. Really, the only thing that really makes sense is getting trench players, edge rushers, but they get the best offensive lineman in the draft here, and I think RG3 would appreciate that. I think Jay Gruden would appreciate that. So, what do you think?
I like that pick. Having were you asking La'el to play right tackle probably?
Yeah.
I mean, having La'el and Trent Williams, that's two mean offensive tackles across from each other. I'm sure Alfred Morris and RG3 really like that.
Yeah.
Just paving the way in the round game, offering pretty good protection. You can move Morgan Moses back to guard because he was awful at tackle when he had to play there last year. So it's a pretty good upgrade. That's a good pick. I hope they do that on draft day, but I doubt that's the pick.
Yeah. But we'll see. So moving on, New York Jets.
I think this one's pretty easy. Got to go with Jameis Winston here. If he falls to 6, if
Okay.
either one of the quarterbacks fall to 6, New York is going
All
to be
right.
all over that. I mean, come on now, Geno Smith, like
No,
over, like are you?
uh,
I mean, we know the offensive or the off the field issues that Winston has had, but at 6, I mean, we're talking about a guy who's going to go number 1 in the real draft. So if you can get him at 6, that's pretty good value. You've already you've upgraded the receiving core with the Brandon Marshall trade this year. You've got a hellacious defense. I mean, this pick just makes too much sense because my fear for the Jets right now is that they're on the border of being in quarterback purgatory, where their defense and running game is going to be good enough to get them to like that 7-9 to 9-7 mark about every year, which means they'll be out of the running for the top quarterbacks every year in the draft. So really, if I were the Jets this year, I'll be aggressive and go up and try to see if I could grab that Jameis Winston or Marcus Mariota. But if they can get him at 6, they just have to take him and run. That's my thinking.
I mean that makes sense. I'm a Geno stan. I think that Geno deserves a shot with finally getting a good group of receivers, Brandon Marshall and Eric Decker around him, and having a better offensive staff behind him, and just a stronger coaching staff in general. I would probably give him another year, but if if you view Jameis Winston as this, number 1 overall pick material as a quarterback, then yeah, you're right. You got to take him. But I don't think I wouldn't really rule out an edge player here. I think that the defense is really like an edge player away from being a very, very, very good unit because they have all those corners and they have Mo Wilkerson and Sheldon Richardson and Snacks. They have all these guys all over their defense, really, except for the edge rushers outside of Quentin Coples, who's been underwhelming. So maybe adding a guy like Dante Fowler or adding Diggy. I'm just gonna call him Diggy. I'm not gonna try. But adding a guy or maybe even Randy Gregory, just adding a dynamic edge rusher to that defense would really put the team over the top, in my opinion, because I just view Geno differently than a lot of people. But that's not a bad pick. Now, in terms of where they might go, a lot of people are saying Amari Cooper. That doesn't really make sense to me. Why are you going to take a guy who's going to be your number 2 or your number 3 receiver with the 6th
Dupree,
overall?
we've been hearing Dupree too.
Yeah, if Dupree falls this far, that'd be a really good fit. But obviously, in this scenario, Jameis Winston's the guy. That's a good pick. All right, next up, we have Chicago. All right, and Chicago will take. You know what? They're gonna take Preston Smith.
Oh.
And Preston Smith is going to be, and he's going to play 5 tech, or they can use him however the hell they want, actually. And that defense is bad, and it was bad last year, and they don't really. And they're moving over to a 3-4 this year, and they don't have a lot of guys who fit into that. And they have Ray McDonald, and they have. Oh, they signed Pernell McPhee, so they have 2 guys. So adding a guy like Preston Smith, who is versatile and is very disruptive and is very athletic, to that defensive front should be huge for that. And at this point, it's just about adding the best defensive players. And Smith is the type of player who can really spearhead a defense, and I think that'll be really good for Chicago.
Yeah.
Now, realistically, they're probably going to end up going with an Arik Armstead or a wide receiver, but not today. What do you think?
I mean, I'm a huge Preston Smith fan. I've been tweeting at him nonstop the past 2 days. Uh,
Yeah.
but he brings a versatility for 3-4. You know, if you can bulk him up, put him at 5 tech, or maybe even slim him down 10, 15 pounds to get him to come off the edge. I think he's a really good, versatile player that Vic Fangio can easily figure out how to make him be productive within that scheme. I think that's a great fit.
Yeah, I agree, and I think there's a number of different directions that they can go with this pick, and none of them will necessarily be wrong because that team needs a lot more help than people talk about. But I think that adding a guy like Preston Smith to their front seven will do it wonders.
Yep. All right, so moving on to my favorite team, the Atlanta Falcons. Jeez, almost said the Hawks.
Oh no.
They're going to take Randy Gregory with the 8th pick. I mean, we just got to get some type of edge rush. It's been abysmal since Abraham left town. And if Troy Beamer starts another game for the Falcons, I'm going to be extremely depressed. But Gregory, he's had his share of issues during the offseason. He failed the drug test. There was a report a few days ago that he measured in at under 230 pounds, which is really scary at a workout. But in this scheme, you could argue that Gregory is the ideal Leo in this draft. He's tall, long. He can get after the quarterback. He's got the he's shown the ability to set the edge at times when he had his weight. He's not ranked this high on my board, but the need for Atlanta is so high to get a pass rusher, especially with the rest of the defense filling in nicely. Upgraded the linebacking core, got some upgrades in the defensive line. I really think Dan Quinn's scheme is going to help Robert Alford improve this year. So really the only weak spot, or the only glaring spot that I see, is free safety and Leo. And there's no safety worth taking this high, in my opinion. So you just got to reach for an edge defender a little bit. I was thinking about taking Diggy here, but he's not really a prototypical Leo for Dan Quinn's defense. So I decided to go with Gregory instead.
Yeah, I'm more critical of Randy Gregory than most of draft Twitter is. I'm kind of worried about his size, honestly, because you don't really know what his playing weight is, and he looks disruptive on tape from time to time, but there's some questions that might come down to his assignment in the defense, but with the possibility of him actually being like a 230 pound or a 220 something pound edge rusher in college, you worry about how his game's going to translate to the NFL. But sometimes you gotta take risks on these guys, and Atlanta needs an edge rusher. And this pick, you don't really see them going anywhere else. I mean, today there was talk about Todd Gurley.
Hell no.
Yeah.
And I love Todd Gurley. I'm a Georgia fan, but that I can't see him be the pick at 8.
Yeah, I don't. If a team takes a running back in the top 10, especially one coming off an ACL tear, man, I don't know, man. That would be dumb, honestly. I mean, like, Gurley's a very good player, but the value of the position, I mean, and I like running back position value more than most, but you're taking a guy top 10 in a stacked class who just came off a torn ACL, which doesn't really make sense. But
yeah,
whatever. Moving on, we have the New York Giants. I'm getting all my favorite teams in this mock, and I think I think it would be such a Giants pick to get Brandon Scherf to play guard, but I'm going to take Amari Cooper, actually, because you don't know how healthy Victor Cruz actually is. I mean, he had a serious injury
Yeah.
In the middle of last season, and a lot of guys aren't coming back from that knee injury that he suffered. So it would be a little bit naive to bank on him coming back to play opposite of Odell. And obviously Odell kind of take over a game by himself, but just the prospect of pairing OBJ with Amari Cooper is terrifying. And having two guys like that at Eli's disposal who can, really threaten anywhere on the field and can stretch the field on both sides. I mean, there's really no way you can stop that. And I actually have Kevin White ranked over Amari Cooper, only slightly, but I have Kevin White over Amari Cooper. But Amari Cooper fits this offense, this really timing-based offense, just perfectly. And him and Odell and Eli can make sweet music and make me cry on Sundays. So yeah, that'd be my pick. I could see them going with an offensive lineman. Probably. I mean, Brandon Scherf just seems like such a Giants pick.
Yeah.
Or they could even go with Kevin White. But I think offensive line or wide receiver here makes a lot of sense for them.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. Cooper's my top receiver in the draft. And you never really know what the Giants are going to do on draft day, which what makes it interesting. And you talked about that patellar tendon injury that Cruz suffered. That's a really serious injury. So I don't know if he's going to be back to the salsa dancing guy we saw before, but if you can draft a guy like Cooper and you have Cruz as a third receiver as he heals, that's a really, really potent passing attack for the Giants because it's looking like the NFC East is going to be able to score a lot of points outside of Washington. So any firepower is going to be greatly needed in that.
Yeah, no doubt about that. So moving on to the St. Louis Rams.
I'm going to go with Marcus Peters, cornerback from Washington. I have a top 10 grade on Marcus Peters right now. I think he's incredible. If you put him with that front four plus Nick Fairley and what's the other guy? And Brockers in St. Louis, and just you let those guys get after the quarterback, and then you put a talented corner like Marcus Peters in that defense, let him match up against number one receivers. He's going to be able to make a lot of plays on the ball his rookie year. I know in Atlanta when we picked Trufant, he struggled a little bit his rookie year because there was just no pass rush to aid him in the passing game. So if you can get a rookie corner as talented as Marcus Peters, let him grow into that number one corner role while having arguably the best pass rush in the NFL in front of him, that's really going to help his development and growth as he turns into the elite corner that I really think he can be.
Yeah, and I'm a little bit lower on Peters, but I definitely see why people like him. He is such an enticing talent, and the size and the physicality that he brings to the game, no doubt would be hard to pass up on, especially on a defense where you have such a talented front seven and such, I wouldn't call it a dearth of talent, but a very young secondary that, could always use an influx of talent. And this would allow them. And then they would have Marcus Peters and EJ Gaines and Janoris Jenkins. So they would have three young, talented corners to really work with. And that's a good thing, especially with the pass rush that they have. I don't think it's unlikely that they end up going with the receiver here because it's the Rams and they love taking wide receivers. And they need to help out Nick Foles because Nick Foles kind of sucks. But moving on. The next pick is our are the Minnesota Vikings. And with this pick, with this pick, I will take TJ Clemmings.
Ooh,
Yeah, TJ Clemmings is a guy who a lot of people are split on. And I think it really comes down to the fact that he is a mean, uh, athletic offensive lineman who's a beast in the run game and has a ton of potential as a pass protector. And the Vikings need help on their offensive line. And Matt Khalil has not been playing very well at all.
yeah,
And at the and they need to bring in a guy who can push Matt Khalil at left tackle and could also play any other position along the line, which Clemmings could do. He can play at guard. He doesn't need to play at right tackle because Loadholt's there. But they need to add talent to their offensive line. They could obviously go with a receiver here. Kevin White makes a lot of sense, but I think upgrading the offensive line when you can is a lot more important than upgrading your receiving core. So that's what I'm going to do. On draft day, I could totally see them going with a defensive lineman or going with a wide receiver, but I think a guy like Clemmings here in an offense that needs help at tackle, I think it makes too much sense.
yep, I like that a lot. I think Clemens, he's a converted defensive tackle from Pittsburgh. I really like what he brings to the table at right tackle early in his career. Uh, I think if they choose to keep Loadhold at right tackle and Khalil at left tackle, he's a great candidate to start at guard. It doesn't sound like Adrian Peterson is going to be leaving because the asking price is too high for him. So you might as well just upgrade protection for him and Teddy Bridgewater and just get after people with a mean offensive line. I really, really like that pick.
Yeah, it's just in general when you have young quarterbacks, it's so important to build the trenches. Um, and a lot of the issues with the Vikings offense came down to lack of protection in the passing game, most of which came from that left tackle spot. So adding competition to the offensive line should be huge for the unit's improvement going into the next year. Next up, we have Cleveland's first round pick.
All right. With the 12th pick, the Cleveland Browns will select uh, Owa Diggy, edge from UCLA. I think this is a guy that's really being undervalued in the draft process right now. I know he had a hip injury in 2013, but in 2014 he put on some really, really impressive tape. He was extremely disruptive with his hand in the ground. I think he has the athletic ability to play standing up. He's some people question his ability to bend around the offensive tackles and sort of like run the hoop, but it doesn't really matter for him because he's so good at playing through offensive tackles when he can't get around them. He's a really strong physical specimen. He's mean. He gives 100% effort every time. I think he'd be a really good fit in Cleveland's defense across from Paul Kruger and help upgrade that defense because their run defense was lacking last year and they could still get after the quarterback a little bit better than they did.
Yeah, I don't think you can have. I don't think you can ever have too many edge rushers. And like you said with Diggy, I think the biggest concern with him on the field is the lack of bend around the edge and the lack of fluidity around the hips, which could actually be a byproduct of his hip injury. But even so, like you said, his ability to power through offensive linemen is just as disruptive or impacting as the ability to bend around them. Now he's going to need to be put in space so he can convert that speed to power. I don't know if he's going to be able to play consistently with his hand in the ground, especially at the weight that he's at. He's a 250 something, 260 pounds. So playing in space, converting speed to power, and using that power to get through offensive tackles, I think that's probably going to be his best bet. And having him with Barkevius Mingo and a Paul Kruger, and with a defensive mind like Mike Pettin, that should be very, very good with him, because Pettin is notoriously good at moving guys around and putting them in the best position to create that disruption. So I really like that pick. We have no idea what Cleveland's going to do on draft day. They might trade both their first round picks to move up for Marcus Mariota. That would be dumb. They might stand put and get defensive linemen. That would be smart. They might upgrade their receiving core. That would be smart too. But I really, I like this pick. I like this fit. So that's good stuff. Next up, we have the New Orleans Saints. And I'm going to stop the fall right now, and I'm going to take Dante Fowler. I think this is.
Yeah.
I think that the Saints need physicality on their defense, and I think that's something that they're really trying to stress this year, is physicality on both sides of the ball. And you can say, Fowler isn't the most athletic defensive lineman, especially when you compare him to the guys who have gone before him so far. But he's incredibly physical. He's very, very high motor, very active in terms of hand usage, very intelligent player. So he's going to bring that physical edge, that mentality to a defense that's really going to wear down on offenses. And there's talented defensive linemen around him. You got next to a guy like Cameron Jordan. I think he's going to be a nice complementary piece to that defense and really upgrade the group.
Yeah, that's a good pick. If you didn't take him there, I was probably going to take him with Miami at 14. I wrote an article about him yesterday or the day before. Just, I think he's a really good player, but I do question the pass rush that he brings from day one, and really for his career. He's great at dominating in the run game with physicality, but he lacks creativity in the pass rush. You'll see him go a lot to that inside swim move right off the bat, and NFL offensive tackles, like, they're smart enough to stop that, like 99 times out of 100 times. So if I don't know if he's gonna develop more pass rush moves like he can, but we've seen a lot of guys like Melvin Ingram struggle with that in the past. So what he offers for day one, I don't really see a place for him in the top 5 or 10, even though that's where he'll go. But at 13, that he offers a lot of value there. I like that pick.
So moving on to Miami, yes.
Yeah, this is easy. I'm going to go with Kevin White. Yeah.
All right. Yeah, he was falling, and I was like, what? I was hoping I'd get him. Yeah, good pick.
Kevin White, wide receiver, West Virginia. They traded for Kenny Stills.
Yeah, Kenny Stills.
They got Jarvis Landry, so they got a speed receiver, possession receiver. All they're really missing is a dominating number one, which is what Kevin White can easily be. He had a great rookie year last year. He's physical. He can physical after the catch. He's a pretty underrated route runner, I think so. He's gotten compared to Julio Jones, which I think is a little lazy of a comparison, but I don't hate it. I think he's more of a Ethan compared him to Kevin White, or not Kevin White, to Kenny Britt, which I think is a pretty good comparison for him. If they can get Kevin White at 14, that's an absolute steal, especially since it's been rumored that they want to trade up in the top 10 to get him. Give Tannehill that number one weapon to pair with Landry and Stills, and you've got a pretty good passing attack right there.
Yeah, and I imagine how Tannehill would feel going one year where his best receiving option was Charles Clay, and then going from Charles Clay to having Jordan Cameron, Greg Jennings, Kenny Stills, Jarvis Landry, and then Kevin White in the passing game. I mean, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
And like you said, I think that Kevin White is that number one that they're kind of lacking, and he's incredibly physical and has this upside as an athlete. So that would be a tremendous pick at 14. I would be shocked if Kevin White fell that far on draft day, but I'm sure the Dolphins would be ecstatic. Moving on to the San Francisco pick. because Jim Tomsula is a horrible coach and made all of his good players retire, they're going to have to go and take. I'm going to go with Shaq Thompson here to play linebacker. I mean, you had Patrick Willis and Chris Borland retire this offseason, and both of whom were top line. I mean, Chris Borland was one of the top linebackers in the NFL during his rookie season, and Patrick Willis is probably a Hall of Famer at linebacker. So really, they just have Navarro Bowman, who's a good player in his own right, but coming off a serious injury. So bringing in Shaq Thompson, he can play that inside linebacker, that weak inside linebacker spot. He can cover, he can run, he can hit. He's smart. He's getting very underrated at the moment, and people still kind of think he's a safety, which doesn't really make sense because you really mitigate his speed advantage that he has near the line of scrimmage once you make him a safety. So he upgrades the linebacking core. They need linebackers. He's one of my top players in this draft, which makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, we talked about this in the last podcast. I'm not as high on Shaq Thompson as you are, but 49ers, they needed a linebacker after Willis and Borland left, so I can see why you make the pick. I probably would have gone in a different direction, like Eric Kendricks, Stephon, or Bernard McKinney, but that's a solid pick right there, and he'll help them against the pass too, because they lost Parrish Cox and Chris Culliver this offseason. So if you can get Shaq Thompson, I can see why, but I don't really like the value there.
Moving on to the Texans pick.
All right, Texans at 16. I'm gonna go with Todd Gurley, running back out of Georgia. I think, Arian Foster, he's shown that he's been wearing down a little bit over these past few years. So I think it really makes a lot of sense to, if you're not going to get a quarterback this year if you're Houston, which is what they really need. So you might as well go with the top player on the board, no matter what position it is. And for me, that's Todd Gurley. And coming off that knee injury last year, it makes a lot of sense for him to be maybe eased into a situation, especially – I don't think he is, but you hear some rumors he might start the season on the physically unable to perform list. So if you can get into a situation where he doesn't have to start right away, you can split carries with Arian Foster and Alfred Blue, that would be a really good situation for him, in my opinion. I really like that fit, and it doesn't push the Texans further into quarterback purgatory, in which they are, and maybe they can get a top flight guy next year.
Yeah, and when you don't have a quarterback, the best way to compensate for that is just run the hell out of the ball. So having Arian Foster and Todd Gurley and Alfred Blue, I mean, those are three physical running backs who they're going to wear down a defense. I'd probably go in a different direction, maybe out of defensive lineman or someone to play in the secondary. But I think that this is a good pick because you're adding a very good player to a situation that he's probably going to end up thriving in, and the team kind of needs a steady running game to compensate for their lack of quarterback. I worry about the knee. I worry about taking a guy this high who's coming off that series of a knee injury, but Gurley's a very good player, so I like that pick. Moving on to the Chargers. You know what? Brandon Scherff hasn't gone yet.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so I'm going to go with that pick. The Chargers added Orlando Franklin this offseason, and he's probably going to end up playing tackle for them or guard. And they also are moving DJ Fluker inside, and they just gave King Dunlap a new contract. So adding Scherff, really they have, between Scherff and Franklin, they have two players who can play either guard or tackle, and both are physical presences on the offensive line and really gives the Chargers a lot of flexibility with what they want to do going into the season. And really you have just an incredibly physical offensive line at this point with very, very few weaknesses. I mean, Scherf is going to be he's one of the players in the draft where I know at the very least he's going to be a solid player. And I think as a guard, he could be a potential, first year All Pro. So I think that'd be a slam dunk pick. I would be shocked if he made it this far.
Oh,
but,
yeah.
Yeah, but he that's a good pick. I don't know. I couldn't see them going. I couldn't see them really going anywhere else besides offensive line. I feel like I've seen that a lot. There's talk about maybe them going with a running back or maybe even a wide receiver. But I think if there's a player like Scherf on the board, you have to take him.
Yep, can't argue with that. I like that a lot. That's a great pick. Where are we? 18, the Chiefs?
Chiefs.
All right. With the 18th pick, the Chiefs are going to take Nelson Agholor, wide receiver from USC. We are, a lot's been made about the Chiefs didn't have a touchdown to a receiver last year. And part of that is on Alex Smith, to be sure, because he does kind of suck. But his receiving core wasn't that great last year. And they signed Jeremy Maclin this offseason from the Eagles. And it makes a lot of sense to add another receiver early in the draft. If you can get Agholor paired up with Maclin, Travis Kelce, Jamal Charles, that's that's four pretty explosive weapons right there for you to find your way through the AFC West with. And if they're going to usurp Peyton Manning and the Broncos, they're going to have to be able to score a lot of points. I think Agholor he's my third rated receiver right now. I think he's really flying under the radar a little bit by big draft. He makes a lot of sense here. He's a good route runner, good hands, really, really fast. He's been compared to Reggie Wayne by some people. That might be a bit of a stretch, but he's still really good. Offers return versatility. He's just another explosive weapon for Andy Reid to get his hands on. I think it's a good fit for them.
Yeah, I think this pick totally could happen too, because the Chiefs, despite adding Jeremy Maclin, still have a need at wide receiver. I mean, they let Dwayne Bowe go, and the core outside of Agholor is all right at best. Outside of Maclin is all right at best. And Agholor is a very Andy Reid type of wide receiver. He likes smaller, quicker receivers than the more big body types. And he also works a lot better with Alex Smith's style, where he's going to be able to gain separation before the catch, where Alex Smith can just throw to open guys instead of testing guys at the catch point, which is why Dwayne Bowe had such an issue producing while he was in Kansas City, because he just didn't have a quarterback who would trust him at the catch point. So yeah, I think Agholor is kind of perfect for that offense and for that quarterback. So I would like that. I like that pick a lot. So I have the Cleveland Browns with their second first-round pick. And I'm going to go with Justin Hardy, who's my third-rated wide receiver, and who I think is getting tremendously underrated. I think that he is just as good of a route runner as Nelson Agholor. I think his hands are better than Amari Cooper's. He's not athletically, he's not going to blow the top off with pure speed, but he's a technician at wide receiver, and I think that's a very important thing to be at the position. He's just a very, very reliable type of player, and the Browns don't. Outside of, I guess, Dwayne Bowe, they don't really have. They need help at receiver. You have no idea what's going to happen with Josh Gordon. I doubt he plays another down in the NFL, to be honest. So just adding a talented, reliable player like Justin Hardy can go a long way for that offense, especially if you're hoping that Johnny Manziel can get on the field this year. Having sure-handed, reliable wide receivers is going to be a big thing for that team.
Yeah, I am not a big fan of that pick, to be honest.
Oh man, you're killing me.
I don't know. You're pretty. I mean, you're a lot higher than Justin Hardy than I am. I think he's gonna have a pretty hard time separating from NFL corners. I mean, I watched the South Carolina game, and he made a lot of contested catches at the catch point, but he really struggled to like separate from the better athletes than he was. And at 5'10", a buck 90, he's not going to be bigger than that much, like than NFL corners. Really, he's not going to be more athletic than them. I see him as more of like a slot receiver at the next level, to be honest with you. But this is a what would you do mock, and if you would take just
Well, I mean, my view of Justin Hardy is I look at him and I think he's a lot like Jarvis Landry from last year, except a little bit more athletic. And the thing, and I had a first round grade on Jarvis Landry, and the thing with Jarvis Landry is that he wasn't really able to separate that well, but he was so aggressive and so, I mean, he was so aggressive and so reliable at the catch point that he really compensated for his lack of separation. Um, I think Hardy is a lot better of an athlete, a lot better of a route runner, and can get more separation through his routes. At the same time that he offers that dynamic as a pass catcher. So even if he's a slot receiver, I think he has a ton of value as a slot receiver, and slot receiver is basically a starter in today's NFL anyway. So I think this would be a huge upgrade for the Browns. I think they would really like this, but you know, I see the worry with him as an athlete, but I think that he's going to be a very good player.
all right. So your beloved Eagles on the clock.
Be,
Uh,
be gentle.
um, see with the 20th pick. With the 20th pick in the draft thoughts mock, the Eagles pick Devontae Parker, receiver out of Louisville. Uh, how do you feel about that?
You know, I'm not a big. If I had to pick here, and if I was going to take a wide receiver, I'd take Devin Smith.
Devin Smith.
Yeah.
All right. I mean,
I
yeah, I'm a big Devin Smith fan too.
I think the thing with Parker is that you have an athletic receiver. I mean, Parker isn't so different than Jordan Matthews,
Yeah.
although Jordan Matthews is a more polished version of Parker. So if the Eagles are going to add a wide receiver, I think they'd really want to add a guy who can really threaten down the field. But I wouldn't hate this pick. Wouldn't love it, but I wouldn't hate it.
All right. Bengals up at 21.
Bengals at 21. Oh man, there's a lot of different directions that they could go with this pick. And I'm gonna go with Eric Kendricks.
Ooh, I like that pick.
And Eric Kendricks is another guy who's kind of on the downswing of his hype train with most of everyone actually.
Yeah.
I still believe. I think that he's an instinctive, aggressive linebacker. He's a little bit undersized, but he's going to be a very good. He's a kind of football player who just has a nose for the ball, and he's going to always be pursuing it. And the Bengals, Vontaze Burfict is coming off a serious surgery, and their linebackers outside of Burfict are a little bit underwhelming. So adding talent at the position will be very important. I think that Kendricks is going to be a very good pro and will start immediately for them at weak side linebacker.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. Once Burfict comes back, you got Kendricks a weak side linebacker, Burfict in the middle, and I guess Maluga playing the strong side. That's not that great, but I think Kendricks is. I think he's the best linebacker in this draft, off-ball linebacker that is. And I have a top 15 grade on him. I'm still pretty high on him. If you can get him at 21, I think that's pretty good value at that point in the draft. I think that would be an absolute steal for Cincinnati to get him there. He's going to be a star.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And realistically, they probably are going to go with a wide receiver here, maybe even an interior defensive lineman. Um, but if you have a linebacker of Kendrick's caliber at this point, I if I were them, I wouldn't pass it up.
Yeah.
So moving on to the Pittsburgh Steelers.
All right. See, with the 22nd pick, the Steelers are going to take Eric Rowe, defensive back from Utah, and stick him at safety. You know, they lost Ike Taylor and Paul Mall to retirement this year, so getting the versatile defensive back makes a lot of sense. Eric Rowe can play corner, but I think his best bet for success, based on what I've seen from his 2012 and 2013 film, would be free safety. He covers a lot of ground on the back end. He's got the speed to come up and make tackles. He's big. Uh, big, versatile defensive back. That's exactly what Pittsburgh could use, because their passing attack was atrocious last year. So getting a guy who can play on the back end and also fill in that corner if he needs to makes a lot of sense here.
Yeah, I really like this pick too because you have this huge question mark at safety now. Because you have Mike Mitchell as their
Yeah.
only, and I think Mitchell, if he's kind of pigeonholed into a strong safety role, would be a lot better. And getting a guy like Eric Rowe to play that free safety spot would be pretty big for the Steelers. So I like this pick a lot. Moving on to the Detroit Lions. So I was actually thinking about this the other day, and I think it would be really, really fun to add Melvin Gordon to this Detroit Lions offense.
Yeah.
They let Reggie Bush go this offseason. The offense has they have Calvin Johnson and they have Golden Tate, and they drafted Eric Ebron last year. So getting this, you're never going to see an 8-man box in Detroit, basically. And if you can get a guy who can take advantage of that, like Melvin Gordon, who is such a home run hitter at running back, that offense goes from scary to just downright terrifying. So it's a little bit of a luxury addition, and they probably might look to upgrade their defensive line here. But because I'm greedy and I want points, I think this will. I think this is such a good fit. I think it's such a good fit for this team. They don't absolutely need a running back, but if you're going Melvin Gordon or Joik Bell, I'm going to take Melvin Gordon. I think he's going to be a dynamic football player, and in this offense, he could be productive right off the bat.
Yep, I like that pick. I don't know if they're going to go that way on draft day, but adding an explosive back like Gordon really, really help open up the offense, make life a little bit easier on Calvin Johnson, Tate, and Stafford. Just take some stress off the passing attack. You pair Melvin Gordon with another back like Joik Bell, that's a really solid 1-2 punch right there.
Yes. Yeah, and they could absolutely. I saw something today about them possibly going with Shelton if he falls this far or something like that.
That doesn't make sense to me.
Yeah, but they definitely could upgrade their defensive line. I don't see a defensive lineman who I really like enough to take this high. I have Melvin Gordon as a top 15 player in this situation. This is such a good situation for him, so it's too hard for me to pass up.
Yeah. All right. So Arizona at 24. We're gonna take. This may not be popular, but Bernardrick McKinney out of Mississippi State. They signed Sean Weatherspoon from Atlanta, which made me really sad. But in that 3-4 defense, he can be like your run and chase guy. So you still got to add a strong side linebacker. And Larry Foote, come on, man, he can't play anymore. So you can draft a guy like Bernardrick McKinney, really good at stacking and shedding. He's big, 6'4", 250, fast. He's a better coverage linebacker than given credit for, even though that's not really his main strength. So, putting him next to Weatherspoon, it doesn't alleviate all their defensive concerns, but it's a really good start for them adding some youth back onto this defense. And especially, we don't, at this point in Darrell Washington's career, he's a really good linebacker, but you can't count on him to be the guy because he's been suspended so many times. He missed last year. It's tough. So I think you add a guy like McKinney, you've got your linebackers. Now you just need to focus on maybe the secondary or pass rushers for the rest of the draft.
Yeah, and I like that pick. I like McKinney a lot. I think he's going to be a very good pro, and that's linebacker's a position in question in Arizona. So I think that'd be a really good pick. So next up, we have the Carolina Panthers. Oh man, I'm gonna take Devin Smith here. This is just, you have the best deep threat in this draft going to one of the best arms in the league, and that offense needs help at receiver. I think that Kelvin Benjamin is a good player, and he has his role as the kind of catch point guy and the red zone type. But you need a player who can stretch the field, and I think that Smith, at the very least, is going to be a very dynamic deep threat in the NFL. But he also has the potential to be so much more. And Matt Harmon, who is probably the best evaluator of wide receivers, called Devin Smith a combination of T.Y. Hilton and DeAndre Hopkins. Now, if you can get a combination of T.Y. Hilton and DeAndre Hopkins with Cam Newton, I mean, that's a hell of a football player. That's hell of a combination. Now, you could add an offensive lineman here. I wouldn't be against it, honestly, but I think that this is this is just too enticing, and I don't love an offensive lineman at this point. So I think this is a good pick.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. I think Devin Smith is getting slept on to a degree. He's more than a guy that just runs go routes. He's shown the ability that he can grow into a versatile pass catcher. He can run more routes than just a 9 route. I think he'll be a great fit in Carolina. Open up that offense a little bit. That's a good compliment to Kelvin Benjamin too.
Yeah, and the thing that's so funny with like the criticisms of Devin Smith as a football player, where it's like, oh, he can only run 9 routes and he can only catch deep passes. It's like, okay, so he can only do the most like explosive thing on an offense. Okay, so yeah, let's not take him very. That's a stupid argument. He is an incredible deep threat with almost I would call elite ball tracking, and he is a very good route runner. He just didn't really get opportunities to exhibit it in the offense he was playing in. I think he's gonna be a lot better player than people are projecting him to be.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
So where are we? 26 with Baltimore. Here's a guy I want to go with. Brashad Perryman, wide receiver out of Central Florida. He's a guy that he's getting a lot of flack due to his drop balls, as he should be. But at 6'2", 215 pounds, he ran a 4.2 at his pro day. I think this is a safe part in the draft to take a chance on that. And a lot of people are comparing Perryman to Sammy Coates from Auburn because they're both kind of big, fast guys who had drop problems. But to me, Perryman's drops are a lot easier to fix than Coates, because at least with Perryman, he's still going up with his hands to catch the ball. Coates is a guy that's running down the field and he'll jump and try to catch the ball with his body instead of tracking at the high point. So if you can get Perryman to concentrate a little bit better, I think that's the guy who's going to be better than Torrey Smith was last year for the Ravens and be an explosive downfield target for Joe Flacco.
Yeah, and I think that when you look at what Torrey Smith was doing in that offense, he was dropping a lot of passes too, and he wasn't the best at the catch point either. But just that ability, just the presence of a deep threat with a strong arm quarterback is going to make a defense respect that dynamic. And I think Perryman is he's a lot better than some are giving him credit for, but he's also a lot worse than some are giving. Like, he's right in the middle of this overcorrection cycle.
Yeah.
I don't think he has some really bad focus drops, but his hands are no worse than Kelvin Benjamin's were last year. And he is such a dynamic athlete. And when you have a guy who can run like he can at the size that he has, you're right. It's hard to pass up on a guy like that, especially in the back of the first round. So I like that pick a lot. And I think wide receiver is totally possible for the Ravens. Corner is another option. I mean, with the guys who are available, going with a guy like Trey Waynes probably wouldn't be out of the question. But I think that's a really good fit. So right now we have the Dallas Cowboys. So I got to pick for Washington, New York, and Dallas. This is great. All these are my favorite football teams, and I'm tempted to give them a kicker, but I won't. Wow, there's a lot of different. And I'm going to give them Trey Waynes, actually. You know, they need to upgrade their corner spot. They have a lot of needs on their defense, but here I think the best value is with corner. Trey Waynes is my top corner in the draft, and I think this is just, it's need, fit, it's everything. I think he's going to be a good player, and this is a good fit for him.
Yep. He's getting some flack. He's been getting some flack recently since the combine when he showed some poor agility times, but he's still a pretty good corner. And at the end of the first round, I think that's a pretty good spot for him. I don't know about him going top 10 or top 15, but if Dallas can get him at 27, that's good value for them.
Yeah. And just adding, I think that people are overcorrecting a little bit on Trey Waynes too. At the very least, he's a physical, athletic corner who is intelligent. He's a little bit undersized. His ball skills aren't great, but he has a ton of tools it's hard not to like him. So just my opinion. And I think that corner is going to be likely here. A lot of people really like Kevin Johnson at the spot. I'm not so high on Kevin Johnson. I think Waynes would be a really good fit here, a really good pick. I'm not sure if he falls this far, but if he does, I'm sure Dallas would be ecstatic.
Yeah. All right, so we're on Denver now with the 28th pick. The Denver Broncos will take Laken Tomlinson, guard out of Duke.
That's a good pick. That is a good pick. Sorry.
Hank Jones tweeted out today. It's not ever really pretty with Laken Tomlinson, but it doesn't have to be because he's an offensive lineman. He wins the majority of his reps. He's nasty, physical, strong. I think I wouldn't have any problem with the team picking him in the back half of the first round. I really do think he's that good. Peyton Manning, he's getting. This is probably the last year of his career. He's going to need all the protection he can get. So, not a flashy pick, but a big, strong, versatile, or not versatile, a big, strong pick in Laken Tomlinson to help solidify the offensive line for Peyton Manning.
Yeah, and Laken's another player where I don't understand the lack of hype on him, because the argument against him is he isn't his technique isn't very good, and that mostly comes down to his hand placement. The thing is, he's getting his hands on guys and he's still kicking their ass. It's messy, but like you said, he gets it done. He's getting it done consistently. He's incredibly powerful. And Denver needs offensive line help, and he's going to make his presence felt on that line and really give the offensive line a nice physical edge, a very violent player. And he's very, very smart too, which is important.
Yep.
And I think this is also totally realistic too, because at the end of the first round, where you're just really looking for the best player, and I think that Laken is that kind of player.
All right. 29. That's you.
This would be
Colts?
the Colts.
Yeah.
Um, Going off the board, I'm gonna give them Arik Armstead. Uh, don't know how did did he fall? Did
Yeah, he
Arik
did.
fall?
Yeah, he did.
All right, all right. So I'm gonna give them Arik Armstead. That defensive front is soft. I mean, most of that entire defense is soft, and you saw that in the playoffs, and they just got run all over. And that happens every single year, where they're like physical running teams just destroy the Colts for the most part. And Armstead, at the very least, is a very good run defender, and he is a physical specimen. I mean, he's 6'8", 300 pounds, former basketball player, very powerful, displays the ability to disrupt in the passing game, but at the very least is a consistent, disruptive run defender. And adding him to a defensive front that is almost completely bereft of talent will be huge for a supposed defensive-minded coach. So I think this would be a really good pick for the Colts, and I think he'd massively upgrade their team, which is exactly why it won't happen.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. I'd have Armstead ranked in my top 20 players, so I think getting him here is really good value. I think there was talk yesterday about him being a left tackle. I think that's,
Oh my
I
God.
mean, to be frank, I think that's utterly ridiculous. The dude hasn't played left tackle since high school. How are you just gonna say,
No,
all right,
that's just it's sheer hot takery. It's
yeah, like, all right, well, we haven't seen him play left tackle since high school, so let's spend a
and
first or
he's not
second round pick on him and put him at left tackle. What? Like,
and you're saying that he's not even a good five tech, which he's a very very good five tech. So it's a waste.
yeah,
That's annoying. That's annoying. It's a
yeah. I mean, at 29, that's really good value. I
Yeah.
mean, Colts defense is soft as baby shit, so they need all the help they can get.
Yeah, that is a perfect analogy.
All right, so
Moving
at
on to the
30.
Packers.
Yep. Packers are going to take. This is a pick I've mocked them for a while. Stephon Anthony from uh,
Clemson.
Clemson. Yeah. My bad.
No, it's okay.
You look at their last two playoffs losses, which have been to Russell Wilson and Colin Kaepernick. So we're so they've already gotten rid of AJ Hawk. They had to put Clay Matthews at linebacker last year, a middle linebacker. So the need is clearly there, and I think Stephon Anthony is a guy who's kind of flying under the radar a little bit. He's not the best coverage linebacker, but he's so fast, like sideline to sideline, and the way he attacks alleys, he's very strong, very fast, physical. He would be a great fit in the middle of Dom Capers' defense in that 3-4. I think that's a phenomenal spot for him to play.
Yeah, I like that. I like that pick. They have no inside linebackers as far as I'm concerned. So adding an athletic, downhill, aggressive type of player will be really a huge difference from what they've had at inside linebacker in the past. So
Yeah,
I like that pick a lot. Um, and that's something that they could very realistically do in this situation. I think this draft is really a wild card towards the back. So adding an athletic player like Anthony at a position of need would be huge, and that's very realistic. So moving on to the 31st pick, which is the Saints pick that they acquired from Seattle in exchange for Jimmy Graham. They take their tight end of the future in Max Williams out of Minnesota. Um, he's not Jimmy Graham. Nobody's Jimmy Graham, but Williams is a very, very good pass catching tight end. He's athletic. He can play in line. He can play in the slot. He's a good blocker. I mean, he's a lot more of a traditional tight end, a lot more than Jimmy Graham, but he's a very, very, very good tight end, and he's gonna, be a physical presence on this offense. And upgrade the tight end spot from what they currently have, and it's a big need. And this is just a perfect marriage of both need and value and talent. So I like this pick a lot.
Yeah, that's a great pick. They need a lot of they need a tight end after getting rid of Jimmy Graham. He's the best. I mean, it's pretty widely accepted that Max Williams is the best tight end in this class. He offers legitimate value as a first round pick. It's a great fit for New Orleans. So now we're on the last pick of the first round with the New England Patriots. And the New England Patriots are going to pick Kevin Johnson, cornerback out of Wake Forest.
All right.
Kevin Johnson is a guy that could have gone a lot earlier than this, but he falls right into the hands of Darth Belichick. He's a guy that he would thrive in Belichick's scheme, in my opinion. He can play off-man zone and develop into a press corner. He's really talented. This is the kind of pick that will happen to the Patriots where they get a really talented player that just falls right into their laps once again.
Yeah, I'm not as high on Smith on Johnson as a lot of people are, but I can definitely see where, or at least why people like him, and especially at the back of the first round, I think this is very good value for a player of his size and a guy who has his type of closing speed. And the Patriots need a corner, and I think this is a good fit for them. So I think that's a very good pick. So that's the draft. That is a mock draft.
Yeah.
I hope everyone's still awake. I hope that people haven't quit out, because now we're answering some questions. And so do you want to address any of the questions to start off?
Yeah, let me scroll down and find them. Okay. We have a question from Tyler at TY13R Gross. Best safety in this class and the best receiver to go across from, if the Bears were to take a receiver at 7, who would be the best fit across from Alshon Jeffrey?
Best fit across from Alshon Jeffrey. It's all about what your philosophy is. I think that having two physical guys like Alshon Jeffrey and Kevin White would be incredibly enticing. But at the same time, you could easily make an argument that having a guy like Alshon Jeffrey, you can win at the catch point, and then having a separation type wide receiver in Amari Cooper. I wouldn't hate either. I mean, you could sell both to me as good guys to complement Alshon Jeffrey. Personally, I'd probably go with Kevin White, just the prospect of getting down into the red zone and having 2 6'3" wide receivers with my ball mentality in the air. That's just it's something you kind of fall in love with, but either really work for me. And what was the other question?
The other question is, who do we think the best safety in the class is?
The best safety in the class, in my opinion, is Jaquiski Tartt out of Samford. And Tartt is interesting because, one, he plays for Samford, so fewer people have heard of him, but he is about the same size as Landon Collins, if I recall correctly. He's about 6 foot, 6'1", 216 pounds, something like that. But he's very, very athletic, especially for his size. He brings the juice as a tackler, and he's very rangy. Now, he's not a guy that I would have consistently play over the top, but he's more of a very, 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 very good strong safety who can play deep coverage. That wouldn't be his main assignment. This draft, this safety class doesn't have any players who I would call surefire first round picks. But at the back of the first round, if a team needs a strong safety, I would have to go with Jaquiski Tartt.
All right. I mean, my top safety for the draft is Eric Rowe from Utah. You know, we've been hearing that a lot of NFL teams view him as a cornerback, which doesn't really make much sense to me because if you go back and look at his 2012 and 2013 games, he was a lot better at free safety than he was at cornerback. And this isn't saying that he's a bad cornerback, but I think if you put him there, he's pretty much strictly relegated to press man and cover three schemes. But he's more versatile as a free safety, in my opinion. You can play that single high, cover two. You can even put him in the box if you want to. He's a good enough tackler. He's got the speed, range to play sideline to sideline. He's definitely my number one safety this year.
Yeah, and I think he's a very talented player, and I think he's gonna be a good safety or cornerback wherever he ends up. I think he's gonna be a very solid player at the least. We got a question from Rob Donaldson, which is actually a really interesting question, and something that has been touched on, and people don't really want to talk about it that much because it goes against the grain a little bit. But Landon Collins as a linebacker, especially in a Tampa 2 type defense that's asking a lot of coverage responsibilities and like smaller, rangier linebackers, I like it. I don't think it's completely out of the realm of possibility for him to be able to do that, because when you have him at linebacker, one, you're asking him to cover a lot less ground than he would at safety, and one of his biggest issues at safety is covering that ground. Collins is a very smart player, and he really has no mental limitations as a player. His biggest issue is just an inability to change direction quickly. So playing him closer to the line of scrimmage is going to make that easier, just make it an easier situation for him, especially in coverage. He can come downhill. He can hit. He basically plays like a linebacker already. So if you ask him to put on another 10 pounds and he's playing weak side linebacker in a defense, I think he can be pretty good. I mean, it's obviously, this is kind of like a Madden thing because I don't know if a team's going to have the balls to do that. But I'd like to see it. I think it could be really fun. And realistically, when he gets into the NFL, he's basically going to be a nickel linebacker anyway. So we'll see.
Yeah, I posed that question like pretty early, and it might have been like after the combine, and I got blasted on Twitter for thinking that he could be a weak side linebacker. But it makes a lot of sense. He's not that great covering, he's not that great of covering as a safety, and you bring him down, make him play will in a 4-3. I think he'd be a pretty damn good linebacker. He's a little bit like reckless as a tackler, but that's something that you can really clean up pretty quickly in practice. It's intriguing. If he falls in the day 2 and the Tampa 2 team picks him to be a linebacker, it's not a bad pick.
And going and kind of relating that question to the earlier question, I'd be shocked if Landon Collins ended up being a first round pick. There's a lot to like about Landon Collins.
Yeah.
And when people bring him up, they either just talk about the positives or just talk about the negatives, depending on how they view him overall. I think there is a spot for him in the NFL as a strict, strong safety. But I mean, the idea of moving him to linebacker is very enticing just when you look at his skill set. But no team is going to have the balls to do it. So
yeah.
Sigh.
I'll go back. I don't really see plays from him in the first round. He's just not a first round caliber player, even this year.
It's going to be the Colts. We know it's going to be the Colts. They're either going to draft Tevin Coleman or Landon Collins in the first round, and we're all going to laugh at them and make fun of Ryan Grigson. And then they're going to win 11 games because they play in the AFC South, go into the playoffs, beat the first team, and then get crushed by the Patriots because that's what the Colts do.
Yep.
But I mean, we don't need to play that out over and over again. Were there any other questions?
Yep, there were 2 more. Where would you go at 50 for the Buffalo Bills? That's their first pick because they traded away for Sammy Watkins last year.
Oh my gosh. Well, I don't know. If he's still there, which is very possible, I would take Brett Hundley because you have a current quarterback crop of Matt Castle and EJ Hundley. And then you have their skill position players right now are LaShawn McCoy, Percy Harvin, Sammy Watkins, Charles Clay, and Robert Woods, and they have no quarterback.
Yeah.
That is the most frustrating thing. That is just, Oh, it's painful for me to think about that. So just adding competition at quarterback, and Hundley has the tools to be good, especially with, if you have Greg Roman, who's just going to simplify stuff and run the ball a shit ton anyway. Having an athletic, strong-armed quarterback back there could be very, just adding him to the competition, because that is so much skill talent that's going to waste, and it just makes me so sad. So I would try to get Brett Hundley there. I don't know if he falls that far.
Yeah, I don't know if a quarterback is the route for them, because this class sucks. I think if you take Brett Hundley, you've got a slightly better EJ Manuel, to be honest with you. So I don't really think that solves anything down the line. They could choose to upgrade their interior line. And the guy that I've been seeing mock there is Ty Sambrailo from Colorado State.
Okay.
I don't think he's a tackle per se, but that's kind of locked down with Cordy Glenn at left tackle, and Chantrell Henderson improved. He improved throughout the year at right tackle as a 7th-round pick. So if you pick Sambrailo, you stick him there at left or right guard. You've got Cyrus Kouandjio. Hopefully, he can improve in his second season at left guard or right guard. Eric Woods at center. That's a pretty solid offensive line to protect whoever the hell is throwing the ball back there.
And that's a ton of really nasty players too. So that'd be fun. And what's the last question?
The last question was from 14 Team Mocker. Earlier, before when we were doing the mock draft, he asked, "Did you suddenly call Greg Jennings better than Mike Wallace, putting the Savage in Football Savage?"
Oh, yes, I did, and yes, he is. So that's not.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll agree.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we are 1 week from the draft. We only have one more week of this hot takery of Arik Armstead being moved to offensive tackle, and I can't actually think of anything to top that. That oh my god. So only one more week of these hot takes, and then we are done, and then we can start making fun of teams for taking Tevin Coleman in the first round. So, ladies and gentlemen, 7 more days. I am Ben Natan. This is my co-host, Charles McDonald. This is Draft Thoughts, and we are signing off.